The Courage to Cleanse. Hazrat Makhdoom Maulana Hafez Basir on Iraqi's legacy. Maulana Hafez Basir sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, his hands resting lightly on the wooden tasbih in his lap. His students, seated in a semicircle, listened intently as the elder spoke, his voice steady but laced with the weight of his memories. "Young ones," he began, his gaze distant as though recalling a distant storm. "There was a time when the Khanqa-e-Maula had lost its soul. It had become a den of vice and indulgence, desecrated by those who claimed its sanctuary as their own." The students shifted slightly, their eyes wide. They had heard stories of the hospice's decay, but never from someone who had lived through it. "I once lived there," Hafiz Basir continued, his voice lowering. "I had taken up a cell in the hospice of Amir Kabir Sayyid Ali Hamadani, seeking solitude for study and prayer. But what I witnessed, oh, how it pained my heart. Men who should have been steeped in devotion indulged instead in irreligious deeds. Their laughter echoed in those sacred halls, not with joy, but with drunken abandon. Wine flowed where water for ablution should have been poured. They turned their cells into havens of sin." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. A faint breeze stirred the edges of his shawl, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. "I tried," he said softly, his voice heavy with regret. "I tried to admonish them, to remind them of the sanctity of the place. But they hurled insults at me, their words as sharp as daggers. They despised me for daring to speak against their indulgence." The students glanced at one another, unease rippling through the room. One of them, unable to contain his curiosity, ventured to ask, "And what did you do, Maulana?" Hafiz Basir looked at him, a faint smile touching his lips. "I did what I could," he replied. "But it was not enough. The Khanqa remained a place of despair until Sayyid Muhammad Musawi, colloquially known as Mir Shamsuddin Iraqi, arrived. The air seemed to shift at the mention of Iraqi's name, reverence almost tangible in the room. "Mir Shamsuddin Iraqi," Hafiz Basir said, his voice gaining strength, "was a man of unimaginable courage. When he took the trusteeship of the Khanqa, he did what none before him had dared. He cleansed it, not just of its filth and impurities, but of its spiritual decay. He threw out the wicked and faithless, those who had turned the house of God into a den of debauchery. He restored its sanctity, making it once more a sanctuary for angels, a place where prayers rose to the heavens." The elder paused, his eyes bright with pride. "You see," he said, "many consider the demolition of idols to be the ultimate act of devotion. But I tell you this, cleansing that Khanqa was a far greater task. Iraqi did not just destroy idols of stone, he shattered the idols of sin and corruption that had taken root in the hearts of men." The students sat in awed silence as Hafiz Basir continued. "He restored the Khanqa to its rightful glory. Prayers filled its halls once more. Food from its kitchens fed the hungry, the poor, the mendicants. It became a place of solace, a refuge for the devout." The old scholar leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Remember this, my young ones. True courage lies not in the destruction of what is visible but in confronting the invisible, the vices, the corruption, the despair that poisons the soul." As the students rose to leave, Hafiz Basir's words lingered in their hearts. They would carry the story of Iraqi's courage, not just as a tale of triumph, but as a lesson on the power of faith, perseverance, and the indomitable will to restore what is sacred.